What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now Plus. I'm Alex, and in this video, I want to talk about some Remedy news. So there was another kind of call, different than like the investor call that I normally go over actually on this channel for Remedy, but we got some pretty interesting information that I wanted to go over. Some numbers, some future stuff, some some things that you don't get really in the other kind of topics that we do when it comes to Remedy. So, one thing that obviously stood out quite a bit was Alan Wake 2. So Alan Wake 2, the sales figures were actually revealed. 1.8 million sales. And I find this actually to be pretty interesting. That second point, 40% game completion rate. So I don't think it still made its money back. I feel, just a few weeks ago, I think we talked about that, right? Now, as to the sales, it's good to finally know, right? Because it's like this entire time, I don't know. I like the sales numbers. I like finding out about sales numbers because, the whole time was, okay, well, it's selling good. Like there's nothing really to worry about, but we're not breaking even yet. Like the production costs have not actually been paid yet, and they're not making money. And it's like, okay, well, for them, we know they're pretty smart. Like, they are very, very smart when it comes to money and manpower and all that kind of stuff. And, Alan Wake 2 is not costing $200 million to develop. And, we kind of know that, but what does that mean for sales, right? Where it's like, okay, well, you probably don't expect this game to sell 5, 6, 7 million to start making money, right? But you don't know the numbers because, they don't really tell us. So 1.8, pretty interesting. So I'm just guessing because I just kind of like rounding up, I guess. 2 million? Is 2 million the point where they would break even? I feel like, if you're, and actually a slide we're going to go over later might actually back me up. If you're planning on like sales, right, and you put up these nice little charts to investors and all that stuff, is it going to be like so specific where it's like, yeah, we need 1,826,422 copies in order to break even, right? Are you doing that, or are you going to kind of round in your own way and say, okay, 2 million, 2.5 million, that's the number. Once we reach that equates to so many dollars, and that's how much we spent on the game. That's how much we need to break even. So just interesting. And the other interesting part about it, that 40%, not really all that impactful, I think, for Alan Wake 2. Well, actually, it kind of is, actually. But, it's something that I've talked about, and I've even talked about with other people on these channels, where it's something that I find super interesting about single-player games. Single-player games, historically, have that kind of completion rate. It's sometimes as low as 20%, 25, 30%, but people, as much as I complain about live service, as much as I complain about multiplayer, and what's interesting is like games are getting so much longer now, right? Games are 30 hours, 40 hours, 50 hours, these bloated kind of open world games. Now, to be honest, even single player linear type games are also getting longer. And Alan Wake 1 is not nearly as long as an Alan Wake 2. A Last of Us Part 2 is longer, much longer than A Last of Us Part 1, right? Uncharted's kind of went up in time. Just some like kind of examples in my head. But what's interesting is the completion rate always tends to kind of stay the same. People generally do not beat games. You and I have beaten Alan Wake 2, but the majority, 60%, have not beaten Alan Wake 2. And that's not I don't think that's concerning at all. In fact, I see that, I say, oh, that's above average. Because the average, honestly, from everything I've kind of seen in my studies, is I think around more 30%, 30, 35% is how many people like generally beat a game. So like a single player game. But it's just, I don't know, I could keep going on and on. It's just weird to me that companies think that they need to make the games longer, even games like this. It needs to be 30% longer than the last game. Well, actually, you still don't have people, even though it's longer, and you want people to feel like they're in your world and in your game for longer, so the money is worth it, so that they buy the game. Maybe that helps sales, but it actually doesn't end up translating into people completing it. So I just find that interesting. So that was Alan Wake. The big thing with Control 2 was that it's now an action RPG. And of course, the first one I would personally classify more as like action adventure. I know I saw some people on Twitter or X, whatever, talking about that they kind of thought like Control 1 was also kind of an RPG. I don't really get that vibe. I don't know where they're coming at there, but that's okay. But, an action RPG, so like leveling up things. I would just think customization, leveling up, skill points, stuff like that. You don't go too in depth. There's some games that are classified classify as RPGs that are very light on the RPG. Honestly, I look at Hogwarts Legacy, and Hogwarts Legacy I think is a very, very good game. I covered it more than I think maybe anybody on the freaking internet. That game's an RPG. It is a pretty weak RPG, right? It's kind of a game. It's a jack of all trades game. It does a lot of different things. It's classified as one thing, or they want it to be that thing in RPG. But in terms of RPG mechanics, it's a little light on it. So we'll see. We'll see what Control 2 actually does. And there's two other things I want to talk about. Number one is this interesting picture that talks about basically, I mean, the thing you got to boil it down to, just that third row. So this is, I think, this is what they want these games to do in order to basically break even. So 3 million for Firebreak, right, the multiplayer thing, and then 3 to 4 million lifetime for Control 2. Now, I will say, I think Control 2 easily does that. I think Remedy games, as we probably know from being fans of Remedy, like they're slow burners. They do sell, but they sell over time, right? I think Control 1 has already far surpassed 3 to 4 million. Okay, so I really don't think that would be a problem. But again, I think, well, number one, that 3-4 million, I think makes the point for Alan Wake, right? It's not 3.22 million. It's not 4.28. It's 3 to 4. So Alan Wake 2, you're imagining that they do something and they say, okay, well, we need 2 to 3 or 3 to 4 or whatever it might be. And actually, Control 2 is being made right now. They need 3 to 4 million. I wonder if Alan Wake 2 actually is more than 2. Maybe they needed like 3 million for Alan Wake 2. We'll see how that goes. But again, there's slow burns. And even just seeing those numbers, I mean, it could be reading too much into it, but it actually, to me, is like a breath of fresh air where it's like, okay, they're not expecting like radically like crazy numbers, right? They're not sitting there twiddling their thumbs and thinking that, they're going to like break the mold and say, okay, well, Control 2 is going to get like 8 million, because these games are highly specific. These games are highly niche, and they'll sell over time. You got to give it years, right? In order for Control 2 to get to 3-4 million, you're going to have to give it at least, I would imagine, 2 years, if not longer. It depends on the game. Some games from them have taken longer. Some have taken shorter. Control 1, I believe, was a pretty fast-selling game. Alan Wake 2 generally was a faster-selling game, all things considered. Okay, one other part that I want to talk about, just really briefly, I want to play a clip. So this is actually Sam Lake, and I believe he's talking to investors or whatever it might be, capital people, and he says some interesting things. So I want you guys to watch this.
As our lovely colleagues have talked you through here today, games require long, complex productions. Games are cutting-edge technological achievements. Games are hit business. We strive to create commercial hits. All of this is true. All of this is needed. All of this must be in balance for us to succeed. What else is true? Games are ambitious, passionate works of creative expression. Games are high-quality entertainment. What we create at Remedy is special, and we must never lose that.
And then just quick, I mean, I don't have too much to say because he does a lot, he does the talking, in the situation, but I mean, I just thank God that we have Sam Lake, in this position. And that's kind of it, He says what I think people would be concerned about, right? It's like, this is what we've said about Remedy for a long time, and this is why I think I've talked about the sales for Alan Wake 2, because people have asked me, like, well, why do you care so much? You keep making videos on the Alan Wake 2 sales. I really love Remedy, and I love that they're different, and they make games actually at a very high level, and they, in some ways, they are cutting edge. I think he literally, doesn't he say cutting edge, like in the clip, the technology, and just, now, in some ways, like, they're right there, like the elite kind of group. You think about, like, the visuals even of, like, an Alan Wake 2, right? They're at the top of the group. Then I would just say, in terms of like their design, like how they actually make games, I wouldn't necessarily say they're in like a different grouping or they're like an elite. They just do it differently. It's just no, you could say maybe it's much better because of that, but I mean, they just do things so different. And that's that combination, right? Like in some ways, they're the head of the pack when it comes to things that everybody kind of shares, right? When you look at like the similarities between these studios, they're up there. Like they're not like bottom, middle tier, anything like that. They're like above average, right? At worst, they're above average, okay? And then like the things that make them so unique make them, I mean, they're very different, right? They're kind of weird. It's kind of just like off a little bit, right? And like that's what makes them special. So, he says what I think a lot of people think, where it's like, These games have to sell. Because the sad truth is, like, as much as I love Alan Wake 2, and it was my game of the year last year, and, you know, like, meshing the live action with the game and, you know, having, like, the musical kind of things to it, like, it's so different. I want those things to continue. If Alan Wake 2 sells, like, 300,000 units and they never break even, you will not get those games anymore. It's not possible anymore to make radically, like, crazy games, or just games that are so different. You had those in, like, the PS3 360 era, but they died. Most of them died off, and you cannot take risks anymore. And what's cool about them is that, I mean, they kind of know, right? Like, the secret is they know they have to make games that are popular enough and are, like, actual games, like, they make sense and people can actually buy them and enjoy them for other reasons and sell. They need these games to sell, because if you're not selling, you can't make games even on a $100 million budget, even on a $50 million budget. If your game sells 300,000 units, you failed. You're not going to be around much longer, right? So they know that, but they also know what makes them unique. They also know, like, what makes them tick, and if they break from that, they're also screwed. You know what I mean? Like, if they become mainstream, then it's possible maybe, like, things shift over, because maybe they get, like, a whole new group of people. But everybody that was there for this entire arc, this entire last 20 years, even, I guess, dating back to Max Payne, so even longer, they're out. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think we want to see them become, like, the Hollywood-esque gaming kind of developer / publisher. We don't want that, right? They might be able to replace customers with people that are maybe even more, but I feel like you lose a part of yourself. Actually, you would lose your entire self if you did it. So I like to hear those things. We've been saying that kind of forever, but for him to say it, and for him to be such a high position there, right, that's very good to hear. So let me know what you guys think in the comments. Make sure, as always, you're subscribed to the channel, bell icon turned on, and I hope to see you all on the next one.